Welcome to Kibbe on Liberty. Kyle, finally.
Yes.
We've been talking on through friends and intermediaries and the evil Facebook Messenger app. We've been trying to get together for a couple of years, and here we are in Las Vegas, where I guess we can't talk about everything we've done here, but we're at Freedom Fest.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
What happens in Vegas, we're Christians, so we say, what happens in Vegas, the Lord knows.
Yeah.
Still knows. You know, that was our motto coming in here. But yeah, no, it's good to finally meet you in person, and it's been such a crazy time seeing. It's just every time I go to a libertarian conference, it's so interesting to me that there's people from all walks of life that you wouldn't expect. There was a talk one day that was, "Is Atheism Dead?" by Eric Metaxas. The next day there was like, "The Rise of Atheism, Why You Need Atheism for Liberty."
Right, yeah.
Which just cracked me up a little bit. But yeah, it's great to meet you, and it's great to be here with all these liberty-minded folks.
You know, I just got back from another libertarian gathering that's very different called Pork Fest.
That one is a little different. I've never been. I've been to Liberty Forum, and they keep trying me to go. I don't know if I've done enough drugs in my life to go to Pork Fest, but is that necessary?
It's not required,
okay.
and that's sort of the fascinating thing is because you literally had church groups in one section of the camp, and then you had like the Naked Olympics in the other corner. And obviously half the camp was very family friendly, and maybe less so over there where they were doing all the drugs. And I think in a lot of ways that's kind of a metaphor for what we believe in. Like we don't actually have to agree with each other to just live and get along. And that's what I like about Freedom Fest is like there's a lot of different types of people here. And as far as I know, nobody got killed or otherwise injured debating Christianity versus atheism.
So far, yeah. It struck me first at Liberty Forum because the same guys who do Pork Fest, because we were out in New Hampshire, and you think of libertarians, and maybe you have some stereotypes in your head, and it is more the Naked Olympic stereotype.
Yeah.
But they had kids running around, and it wasn't what you think. Just single guys in fedoras that don't know how to talk to a woman.
Yeah.
It was families and
now.
Yeah.
It's getting personal now.
Guys with weird curly mustaches and
crazy,
and drinking beer all the time. Those kind of guys are the guys you think about. But no, it was interesting to see that you had people from both sides that were just like, we can come together and try to just be left alone. You know, which was an interesting thing.
Yeah, it almost felt like Utah because they are literally repopulating the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah. Utah and Elon Musk are single-handedly repopulating the globe. So that's a good thing, I think. Yeah.
Well. But in the case of New Hampshire, they appear to be married to the people that they're
sure
populating with. I don't know if that's the right word or not. But and you're a beer guy. That's important.
Yeah, that is an important thing.
And have you checked out any breweries here in Nevada?
I haven't yet. I was hoping that you would be the guy to show me around. So
there is. I was told because I used to do all these videos called Beer is Freedom. And beer was a metaphor for various economic principles, and it's kind of a bait and switch where I'm like, I'm making a video about beer, and people are like, oh, I love beer, so I'm going to watch that video, and suddenly I'm talking about Austrian economics, so it's a little bit unfair.
Well, we live in California, and obviously, which is anti-freedom from the top down, but it's interesting when you talk to people on the local level, they don't actually believe that. The people that run their businesses and people who run breweries out there. There's a great microbrewery scene in San Diego and LA and all over the state. And those people are just inherently pro-freedom and pro-liberty. Yeah. They might be registered Democrats and they might vote for Governor Newsom for some reason, but they're voting against their own interests, and they kind of know that on some level because you talk to them and you sit down at a brewery and they grumble about regulations and they grumble about this and that, and which California has surprisingly pro microbrewery laws, which is weird for California. I'm sure they'll crack down on that soon.
They'll eventually destroy it like everything else.
They'll figure out a way.
What? Something's thriving?
Yeah.
We must tax it and regulate it, but that disconnect is quite typical, and that's the real reason I started doing videos about beer, because the industry, the microbreweries, the nano breweries, these are all just radically entrepreneurial people but they probably think they're socialists too. And that disconnect is fascinating to me, because they're artists, they're creating something beautiful, they're businessmen because they're grinding it out and trying to make razor thin margins. And then they deal with all these regulatory and tax barriers where the distributor industrial complex is totally screwing these guys. And it's like, guys, this is a life lesson in why you don't give governments power. But
Yeah, and you see that. I mean, and the pandemic especially brought that out, because we saw people that run businesses in our hometown. You know, we're in the middle of nowhere, we're in a kind of a rural area in Southern California, and you saw a lot of people that run businesses that are like, I'm voting for, these pro-big government candidates. And you're like, why? Like, you complain to me all the time about about the health regulators coming in, the health, you know why that is, right? And so, or people that don't like our local sheriff because he's a very pro-freedom local sheriff, and it's strange to see that disconnect. But yeah, I think a lot of people in their hearts are pro-liberty, and they just don't realize it yet.
Yeah, and they're worried about normal things that normal people care about, like beer and family and maybe football, whatever their passion is, and they just sort of check out of that, and it can lead to very bad things when they sort of let politics do what it does, which is accumulate power and go after people. But I get the instinct, absolutely. I would be a much more sane person if I didn't pay attention to this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's, my favorite book is Lord of the Rings, and that's one of the main messages in the Lord of the Rings is that you have these hobbits whose their joy and their value is found in just tending their own garden and not getting involved in the politics of the outside world.
Yeah.
And yet at some point they realize if we just do that, the world is going to fall to ruin and we won't have our garden anymore.
Yeah.
So by necessity they're dragged into this outer battle, but as soon as it's done, I'm back to my garden, and that's the big victory at the end of the battle, is Sam getting to go back and tend his garden.
Yeah. When you think orc, which senator comes to mind?
Can I name 100 of them, or do I have to just pick?
They actually travel in a pack, and they just sort of destroy everything that they touch.
I can pick one or two that aren't orcs.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And maybe they're here at Freedom
maybe
Fest.
one or two of them's here at Freedom Fest.
Yeah, Mike Lee and Ren Paul are here.
Yeah.
and I always brag that I can count the people that I respect and will actually allow into my home on, I think it's on one hand now. Because if you let a vampire into the house, you're never the same. So you don't want to do that. But like normal things, and this is why pivoting to comedy, I think one of the reasons why you guys really get under the skin of the radical progressive left is that comedy is a bridge. Comedy is what normal people like, as opposed to partisan BS that goes through. And I have this theory. I'm going to run it past you. You've never heard it. I run it past every comedian I know. I have this theory, kind of going back to, not exactly, but I'm thinking of Lenny Bruce and the ethos of just breaking rules and talking about forbidden things as a way that civil society breaks down barriers and prejudices and things that scare you. If you can tell a joke that's really uncomfortable and people aren't sure if they're supposed to laugh, in some ways it takes the temperature down a little bit, so that people, when they go to a town hall meeting or they go to church or wherever they're going and meeting their neighbors, and their neighbors are a little bit more different than they are, or maybe they're a lot different, it diffuses the time bomb and gets rid of some of that tribalism where you hate something and somebody that you've never met and have never conversed with.
Well, think about the 24/7 news cycle. It's designed to make you not only hate the people on the other side of the political aisle, but it's designed to make you stress and worry and fear everything. Every 24 hours, there's a new threat to democracy or a threat to your life. As soon as the pandemic was over, well, I guess it's still over, I don't know. It depends on which news media outlet you ask.
Monkeypox.
Monkeypox pandemic.
If you're not afraid, you're not paying attention.
As soon as the first pandemic was over, there was I was on Twitter or something, and the mask mandate's lifted, everybody's free, and then there's a news story, new drought in California, be very afraid, you're going to be out of water in 6 months, like, and you see this story that they're just like, what's the next story that's going to scare you, And so there's an interesting thing, like we'll get emails from people who consume their news through the Babylon Bee. So they get real news through fake news.
Yeah.
And
which it turns out is more reliable than real news.
I'll let you guys be the judges of that, I guess. But when you read a Babylon Bee headline, you're doing the doom scrolling thing, where you're like freaking out about every story that's on your Facebook feed, and then all of a sudden you come across a Babylon Bee headline, and there's a moment of, wait a minute, is that real? And then you go back and, oh, it's a joke. And I think there's a way of joking about things that can disarm the fear that we feel.
Yeah.
The fear that our leaders want us to feel, the fear that politicians want us to feel. And so I think that comedy has this real disarming power, and that's what makes it scare the people who are in power. That's what makes it scare people on the left. That's what makes it scare people in government. That's why they want to fact check us. Because all of a sudden we have this power to say that narrative that gives you so much power is disarmed. It doesn't have any power over us because we don't fear.
Fact-checking a joke seems almost like a joke.
Well, it makes
and they do that. They were doing that all the time. I mean, they've started kicking you off things now.
And that's all part of the end game, because if they can fact-check you enough times, now they can claim that you are disinformation, misinformation, or whatever the different labels are. And once they can do that, then they can just kick you off and say, well, they were sharing fake news. The very first one we ever got dinged for, we had been fact-checked a few times, but the first one that Facebook ever dinged us for on social media was we said CNN purchased a giant washing machine to spin the news. And we got a notice from Facebook that we shared fake news and that we were facing full-on deplatforming and demonetization for that joke, which is kind of a stupid joke, right? I mean, I acknowledge it's a boomer joke, but it was enough to where it was like, really? This is... So now that joke is even funnier, because if you search Babylon Bee, CNN, the first result isn't Babylon Bee, it's Snopes saying, fact check. Did CNN actually purchase a giant washing machine to spin the news in? Fact check false. So there's absurdity on its face, and they really do shoot themselves in the foot. Because we rally so much support from that stuff, where people are like, this is ridiculous. Even people on the left will come up to us and go, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Yeah, but the fear thing, and that we've been sort of obsessed with the humanitarian damage caused by lockdowns and all the things that government has done to us in the last 3 years. And by the way, that infrastructure is just itching for the next pandemic. Today, the District of Columbia, where I tragically reside, is already unrolling some big monkeypox industrial complex, and it's like, please stop, leave me alone. But they won't, because fear was the Achilles heel. They managed to scare enough people into tolerating and even applauding incredible encroachments on liberty that I never ever would have imagined that Americans would have put up with that. But get us afraid enough, and anything goes.
Yeah, well, I just saw, I'm not in LA, but I'm in Southern California, and LA just announced rolling back mask mandates, putting them back in place. And you're just like, what kind of world do you live in, where this is acceptable? But it really is what government thrives on. It's that fear and that threat of force.
Well, it's become. I did a panel here, and I won't academic geek out on this, but Frederick Hayek, we always quote Hayek on the show. He wrote a critique of this proto-socialist French guy named Henry Saint-Simon, who basically turned science into a religion, where he was building temples to Sir Isaac Newton. And the whole idea was, let's put the scientists, because they're the smartest, and they're going to know better for what is good for us. Let's put them in charge and give them all the power. And it's precisely where we're at right now. There are Fauci prayer candles you can buy on Amazon. He was deemed the sexiest man alive by The Guardian. Speaking of funny things, I guess. Like, funny or absurd. So it's become like a civic religion where if you question the faith, you're banished and perhaps God knows what. Thank you for joining me today on Kibbe on Liberty and for being part of our fiercely independent audience. Every week, my organization, Free the People, partners with Blaze TV to bring you this show. My guests bring smart perspectives on everything from current events to timeless philosophical debates. If you like what you hear, go to freethepeople.org/KOL and support Kibbe on Liberty so we can continue to produce these honest conversations with interesting people. Now, let's get back to it.
Well, it's funny, being Christians, like people made fun of us for being the crazy, zealous, oh, you guys are the crazy people on the street corner with the sign saying the end is near. And we've kind of mellowed out from, our Christian culture has kind of mellowed out from some of that stuff. We still have our strong beliefs, but, we're not necessarily the guys out there on the street corner with the big sign saying whatever. But now the left are the ones, or at least, people that are very pro-government are the ones who have this, here's the next big threat, climate change, and in order to fight climate change, we have to do this, this, and this. You have wokeness, which is a set of beliefs about intersectionality that is like their religion, and they have a path to salvation. They have a sin nature problem. They have end times predictions. They have moral standards that you have to live up to, and if you don't follow them, you're going to get canceled. So they have the analog for everything they thought we were, and they've become
redemption, by the way.
Well, they have a path to redemption, but you can never achieve it. It's you keep beating yourself on the back. I'll do better. I'll apologize. But as soon as you apologize, you get canceled even more for your apology. So you never get to that moment of redemption.
So let's. I don't actually know the origin stories of Babylon Bee, and you've been there since the beginning?
Yeah, since day one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't actually found Babylon Bee myself. I was a write-in candidate. I emailed in a headline, and
no one else wanted the job.
No one else wanted it. I emailed in a headline on day one, and it got published on day two, and then and from there I became the head writer, and then I took over as the editor-in-chief a couple years later. But the guy who founded it, Adam Ford, he was doing a Christian webcomic, and he saw kind of the winds of culture shifting, and he saw that on the right we kind of needed something that was powerfully speaking the truth to culture through comedy. So he had read an Onion headline, and I forget which one it was, but he had read an Onion headline that was just brutally savaging conservatives, and he laughed at it, and he was like, man, I wish I agreed with these guys because this is funny, you know?
Yeah.
And he saw the power of, he was disarmed to the point where, like, if he had come across a New York Times article making the same point, he would have just rolled his eyes, stupid New York Times. But because it was comedians, because it was people that were making a point through humor, he was disarmed. His guard was down, and he was able to, like, see the point they were making. And he's like, man, I really wish I agreed with them because it's so funny. And so he wanted to find something that was, didn't hate us. Like, I don't think the goal of the Babylon Bee was always like, we're gonna make points from a conservative perspective or a Christian perspective, but it was certainly like, let's write comedy that doesn't hate us, which just doesn't sound like that crazy of a goal. But in this day of woke, left-owned comedy, it was definitely a weird thing. Yeah,
I struggled early on to get all of the church bass player jokes.
Right.
Do you guys still do those?
We still do those, yeah. And if you go to church, I can make some recommendations, and then you'll get the jokes.
No, I intellectually get the jokes, but I'm not in that community. So, and there's drummer jokes, and it's I get it, yeah. But that's part of the that there's actually a community that's kind of willing to make fun of itself. I mean, that was
the start. I mean, it was, if you can't make fun of yourself, you don't have a sense of humor. If you can't make fun of yourself, you're not going to be funny when you're making fun of the other guy.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of our jokes target the other guy, or target the left, or target the outside. But, you look at a lot of the late night hosts who take that to the extreme and they make fun of the other guy every single joke. And now they're just smug lecturers. They're not funny anymore.
Yeah.
You look at Saturday Night Live. They have a good one once in a while, but a lot of it is just the smug, smarmy lecturing. And so very early on, we knew we had to. we had to make fun of ourselves. And it's much better than the comedy from the outside that makes fun of Christians. Because as Christians, we watch like Hollywood movies that are making fun of the church, and you're like, the people who wrote this have never been to a church in their lives. I can tell, because they're using the wrong word for this, and they're using the wrong. That's not how things are, So comedy from the inside is always funnier. And my comedic influences are like the Christopher Guest mockumentaries. This is Spinal Tap, A Mighty Wind, Waiting for Guffman. All those are the ones that they're written from within that culture. And you can tell they love that culture, whether it's heavy metal or folk or the different, local community theater, the different cultures they make fun of. But they're not mean. They're not mean-spirited. They don't say, this is so stupid, They make fun of it, but it's from within.
Yeah, because this is so stupid is not funny.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
Right.
Were you a comedian, like, did you dabble, or did this just happen?
It was a little bit of a lightning bolt that My family would say I was always funny growing up. I was the family joker that was, always cracking jokes or whatever. I think I did win the class clown award in high school, but I was never the class clown who was, throwing a pie at people or, or wearing the clown nose and that goofing around. Like, it was never over the top humor like that, the spitwad on the teacher's back or whatever. It was more just the dry, witty zinger or comeback was kind of my style of comedy that I resonated with. I watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail when I was in 6th grade, and I was kind of a sheltered Christian kid, not super sheltered, not fundamentalist or anything, but certainly like I wasn't exposed to a lot of outside comedic influences, and I saw Monty Python, and it was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. We watched the opening credits to Monty Python, and we were laughing so hard we were crying. We had to rewind the VHS 10 times to try to get through it.
Yeah.
And so I think that dry, absurdist comedy for the sake of comedy type philosophy really resonated with me early on.
I have no idea what. So John Cleese is here at Freedom Fest, and I'm sure you're going to fanboy and sort of stalk him outside of the green room, and that's cool. But I'm assuming he's not a Christian conservative libertarian constitutionalist. I think he's a comedian that hates the intolerance of woke culture that won't let him do his craft. I assume that's what he's going to say. I don't know.
Well, I'll let you know. I'm interviewing him in 4 hours. So
nice. Okay.
I'll let you know what he says. But
so you don't have to stalk him. He's
I don't have to stalk him. But no, I agree. But that is the cultural shift that we're seeing. Is you have even people on the left. That's Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle and Bill Maher. Bill Maher came to our defense on his show.
Yeah,
that's crazy. This guy that I grew up hating Bill Maher because I'd see him on there, and I was a right winger, pro George W. Bush. That was my upbringing, and you see Bill Maher slamming George Bush for the Iraq War or whatever. You're like, oh, that guy's an idiot, liberal, whatever, and to see a guy like that who hasn't really changed his beliefs. He's stayed the same. The left has gone into loony land, and he's just standing there like, what are you guys doing? Yeah. So to see a guy like him defend this little Christian satire side is such an insane thing to us.
It's kind of interesting because my general theory is the same, is that the left has just gone way over the end. So guys like Dave Chappelle and Bill Maher are standing, and Elon Musk actually tweeted a joke about this.
Him too.
I'm still standing where I was. But I'm not sure that's exactly true, because I used to go on Bill Maher when I was the Tea Party guy, and Bill had one joke that we were all racist. And I think he's sort of starting to question some of that cheap shot stuff because he sees it weaponized. But maybe I'm just being hopeful.
Well, and it's bad humor too. Yeah. I mean, that whole shtick of all the rights. You'll see an Onion joke once in a while, or all the jokes on the late night that are just like, oh, Tucker Carlson hates this because he's racist. You know, and you're like, well, that's just it's so one dimensional. You haven't, it doesn't understand the topic that it's addressing. And whenever a joke comes off like that, then you're just beating on the stereotype that everybody else is beating on. It just doesn't come off as fun. Yeah. Because humor has to have a sense of surprise and a unique angle and innovation to it that's just boring now.
Yeah, I sort of wonder, as a lot of people do, I'm following Elon Musk and the whole Twitter journey that he's on, and I have no idea where he's going with that. But I have this idea that there's kind of, and calling it anti-woke is not right because it's just turned off by wokeness, and they don't want to be against that. They just want to be normal. I think there's a emerging coalition of people that do like funny jokes and do like actually having conversations with people that are different than they are, and would love to go to a football game without having to wear a gay pride sticker on their jersey or whatever they're doing and in the NFL right now. It's like, can't we all just get along? And I wonder if there's sort of either the tip of the spear or the canaries in the coal mine, whatever the metaphor is, where Dave Chappelle and Bill Maher sound like the reasonable guys, and John Cleese. Maybe there is a reformation against this intolerant authoritarian religion, whatever that thing is, which would shake us up as well, because we have our own tribes as well, and we misunderstand people outside of those tribes just like the other side does.
Well, we definitely see that kind of change emerging right now, and I don't know what the tipping point was, but it does feel like there was a tipping point in the last 6 months to a year where people just said, you know what, enough. I'm not like, I don't hate you. I can tolerate you and your different lifestyle, your different beliefs, but it doesn't mean that I have to like sit here and shout and support you all the time. Like let's be friends, even though we disagree, but I don't have to like, just because I don't shout and support you. And personally, I think social media is one of the main drivers of this kind of division, because people were locked in their homes for 2 years. All they had was social media. You know how easy it is to misread a text or misread a social media post and think someone is, and it defines people by their political beliefs. If I saw you if I didn't know you, I saw you at a brewery, we might share a beer and talk and not ever bring up politics. Right. We might not know of any of the political differences between us, And same thing with someone on the far left that I met at a bar. I'm sure I've met a bunch of people at breweries that if they knew I was a Babylon Bee guy, would hate me.
Right.
But that doesn't come up because we're just hanging out, And I find that when, there's an interesting phenomenon that there's a lot of haters on social media for the Babylon Bee. But when I get out there in real life and I talk to liberals who don't, maybe they don't like the Babylon Bee or whatever, but they're just like, oh, that's funny. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. There's a politeness in person where you're like, yeah, I'm not really that offended by it. It's not that big of a deal. So I think, and it is one of the goals of the tech companies. They want to divide us. You know, it's just a tool of the government to continue to divide all of us. Yeah,
it works on social media and it works in politics, and these things are not representative of the public.
It's not real life. What is the stats on Twitter? It's 10% of people are on it and 0.1% use it. That's exaggerated, but there's a very small percentage of people that actually post 90% of the tweets, and they're extremists.
I guess we'll find out in Discovery just how many bots.
We'll find out how many, and they're all bots.
Yeah,
100% of them are bots. But
so you guys were on this like meteoric trajectory where you became sort of this breath of fresh air, and I started following you guys almost from day one because it was funny again. And when did you start running into trouble with our tech overlords that didn't like what you were accomplishing?
Yeah, so we had always been fact checked, but it was always a little bit more good natured, because we had a joke early on that a big mega church out in North Carolina had installed a water slide baptismal, and that got fact checked, and there was like the big spiral slide. This isn't real, and the church had to issue a statement on their Facebook: "Don't come for the water slide; it's not real." But it was always a little, you kind of understand why a fact check like that happens, because little old ladies are on Facebook and they're calling the church and complaining,
Sure.
But
or people are showing up saying, "Where's the slide?"
That was happening,
Yeah.
But it was that CNN washing machine story I mentioned earlier that was the first time we got a taste of this kind of hostile fact check, where it was Babylon Bee is dangerously muddying the waters.
When was that?
That was 2018, spring of 2018. And after that, it just kind of got worse and worse. Every joke we published, there was some big fact check. And there's this like cabal of fact checking where if Snopes fact checks you, Facebook flags your page for misinformation. And then, CNN does a report on it. And then that report ends up on Wikipedia. And so now Wikipedia says that you're a far-right misinformation site. And then New York Times quotes that in an article. So it's just this big circle of everybody coming after you. But there's just been some extremely absurd ones getting accused of hateful conduct, getting accused of calling for violence. Some of them have been algorithm driven, where a bot just didn't understand our joke. Some of them have been a manual fact check where somebody said, no, this is hateful, and tried to take something down. So it's never really let up, and most recently we've been banned from several social media platforms because of it.
If you've made it this far into the show, it means I must be doing something right. Kibbe on Liberty is just one of the amazing products we created for the people. We tell emotionally compelling stories and produce educational videos for the liberty curious. Our award-winning documentaries personalize all things liberty, independence, creativity, hard work, integrity, and perseverance. After the show, check out our work at freethepeople.org. And if you like what you see, donate to support what we do. That's freethepeople.org. Now back to the show. Yeah, you're off Twitter, or you're just frozen on Twitter?
We're permanently banned from Twitter until we acknowledge that we're hateful bigots, and then they'll let us back on.
So you're in Jordan Peterson's.
Yeah, Peterson copied
box.
us. He copied our.
You were bad long before.
We were bad before him, but and then TikTok kicked us off, but that's good because we don't have to be on TikTok anymore.
Yeah, so. You don't have to be
twerking on TikTok. They don't make me twerk for.
So what? And obviously that those platforms, maybe not TikTok, but I think Twitter was probably pretty important to you guys as you were building your brand.
Well, it's great to be in the political conversation. Like, we're in touch with Elon Musk, and that's only because he was replying to our Twitter. You know. You don't have many other platforms where celebrities are interacting with you, where senators are sharing your jokes, or celebrities are retweeting you. That's kind of the value of Twitter to me, is that you do get some big connections that you wouldn't otherwise get. There's capabilities of that on other platforms, but it's just not used in the same way. People aren't on Facebook commenting as their big name blue check profile. So we lose that. We lose the traffic, and then you're just kind of out of the conversation. A big news story happens. And it used to be like we'd immediately get the writers together. How are we tackling this? We would have an article up in 20 minutes, and boom, if you can be the first one there, you just get a ton of retweets and views and traffic. And we don't have that anymore. We're not part of that conversation anymore on Twitter. So it is kind of a big sacrifice, a big cost that we're paying.
Yeah, I see a lot of your fans screenshotting things and sharing them on Twitter, but that doesn't really help you as a business.
Yeah, and you can still share BabylonBee.com links, but we had 1.5 million followers, so it was a significant driver of both traffic and being part of the conversation.
Yeah. So what is the alternative business model like? How do you guys generate revenue?
Yeah, so luckily we had the foresight. Our CEO, Seth Dillon, had the foresight to create a paying subscriber, almost a Patreon type model, where people just kind of kick in $5 a month or whatever it is to help support us. And we did that long before we were really that suppressed or deleted off these different social media accounts. So we had already kind of built up this base of people that were just like, yeah, I'll help you guys grow. Because even when we weren't getting censored and banned, you don't make a ton of money just writing articles on the internet.
Right, yeah.
That model is dead, of writing an article, putting on Facebook, and hoping to get some traffic from it. That model just doesn't work anymore. So having a paying subscriber base was a great way for us to be able to expand, hire some people, expand into some video content. But the upside of that too, the upshot of it was that when we did start to get banned, not only did we were able to survive and keep the lights on, but we would drive more subscriptions because people see how ridiculous it is, and they'll just subscribe. So that's how we've been able to drive a lot more revenue than before, when we were just trying to get traffic off Facebook.
What's so creepy, and I just had the Give Send Go guys on, who are an alternative to, as they say, go F me, which is pretty
Aren't
funny.
They Christians? Are they allowed to say that?
I guess if you say F, I think it's okay. And the F is for fun. So, but the deplatforming, it's not. They're starting by kicking you off of Twitter, but as we saw with Amazon pulled the server plug on Parler, yeah. And to the point where people are getting debanked. So there's You have to have layers and layers of.
It's not. See, that's the thing. It's not. That's a good point because it's not foolproof. It's one way. Yes, if we get off Twitter and Facebook, maybe we'll still be able to limp along with just paying subscriber support. But ultimately, I mean, all payments in the world go through a few banks.
Yeah.
One of those cuts you off, you're doomed.
Yeah.
So we always joke that we're going to have to go door to door passing out hard copies of the Babylon Bee. That's the only way we're going to be able to get the word out soon.
a return to roots.
Well, and another way we've been able to survive is our email list. Our newsletter list has been a great way to reach people directly, but we've been suspended by MailChimp before.
Yeah.
And we had to appeal. We did manage to get back on, luckily. But that's another area. I think we sent out a pro Second Amendment email or something, and they flagged it.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
it's so creepy. And by the way, you're describing this very well-oiled machine of when these guys flag you, then these guys kick into action. The new twist, which probably isn't new, but it's now been said out loud. The Biden administration says the quiet part out loud when they're like, "Oh, by the way, we're telling Facebook." Right. About content that offends us. So you now have the government, most powerful guys in government, dictating to tech companies, and maybe it's symbiotic. I don't know. Maybe when the president's people call you, it's an offer you can't refuse, or maybe they want to do it anyway because they're woke. I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of political capture where these are fundamental First Amendment violations.
Well, the cat was out of the bag when they censored that New York Post story about Hunter Biden a couple weeks before the election. And you start to think about it, they're the ones who are always throwing up stuff about elections are safe and secure, and then accusing Russians of meddling in the 2016 election. The real election meddling was happening in the big tech companies, whether you think that changed the outcome or not. And I'm not talking about hacking machines or anything. I'm talking about the amount of influence they had, that there was a negative story about one candidate and they banned a news organization that's been around for decades, I don't know, 100 years, I don't know how long the New York Post has been around, but for a story that turned out to be true, that's when they really let the cat out of the bag about what they're doing. And you're right. I mean, just more recently, was it Nina Jankowicz? I forget which one of them said that we need to be able to get in and edit someone's post and add disclaimers. Like what? And well, it goes into the argument about free speech, and you have some conservatives saying, well, they're a private company, they can do what they want, and you're like, well, they are a private company up until the point that they're doing the bidding of the government, and then they're just another arm of a branch of the government, really.
Yeah, they're either politically captured or they're cohorts with that tremendous amount of power. Like I think I've said this 1,000 times, but it's such a lazy argument that libertarians make, that when we say, oh, it's a private company, they can do what they want, because it's not really. I mean, you're talking about when Mark Zuckerberg went before Congress a couple years ago, he was quite explicit. I want you to help me censor our content, and I have an army of lawyers and lobbyists who would love to write that legislation for you. And what he's really saying is, let's create such a complex structure that my competitor, we don't know who that is yet, but that person never gets to market because the regulatory barriers are just too high.
Yeah, same old story. Crony capitalism.
Yeah. So these are crony capitalists, and I tend to think that they're probably more captured than like rabid ideologues, but who knows? I mean, it's hard to tell, chicken and egg kind of thing. But this is sort of getting depressing. This should be a fun conversation.
Should we tell some jokes? I don't know
what. Well, what do you think's going to happen? So, we're talking about all these guys who probably come from the left, like John Cleese and Bill Maher, pushing back against this. I'm always sort of a long-term optimist because I think people with a modicum of freedom figure stuff out. And I think there is sort of a revolution percolating up where people just find the speech policing in particular just more than ridiculous. Like now they're offended by the fact that they can't laugh, and they're afraid to go to a comedy show because, like, if I laugh, is someone gonna cancel me?
Right.
Do you see that, or do you think we're spiraling down?
At Kibbe on Liberty, freedom is a lifestyle 24/7, something you live and breathe and wear every day. If that describes you, you need the very best liberty swag in the market today, just like this shirt I happen to be wearing. Go to freethepeople.org/KOL and check out our exciting merch. You too can love liberty and look cool.
I see a little bit of both, and I see, there's a pessimist in me. There's I see the beer half full and the beer half empty. And unfortunately, this is just water and not beer. But
if I had known,
next time. But you see the dark storm clouds on the horizon. You see how bad things have gotten, and you wonder, can this get any worse? And you look to a lot of countries in the past. You look at Soviet Russia, and you go, yes, it could get worse. This can be much worse.
Yeah.
So are we going to go that way or not? The encouraging thing is that you see especially encouraging that you see the current generation. You see a lot of the young people that are just, you know what, we don't care about this. We don't care about cancel culture or whatever. We're going to laugh. And as long as we hold the comedy, we do hold the power. Gen Z, for all their faults, their fashion problems and the fact that they dance on TikTok and stuff, they, if you go on TikTok and you spend any time there, there's so many politically incorrect jokes that people are telling on there. And if you go flip through comments, there's not much pushback. There's not much, hey, this is problematic. You can't tell this joke. Yes, there's a crazy far left, radical gender TikTok teachers of TikTok type area, but there's also some hope there. You look at people that are making fun of themselves. You look at people that are telling jokes about themselves, like their own race, and making fun of themselves for being white or being, Asian or whatever the different, things are. And you see an encouragement and you think back to like when comedy was okay. And you can see a reflection there. And so my hope and my prayer is that continues to push, like that side continues to win out. That side will win out. I agree with you, long-term optimist. I just don't know if that's going to be in the next 10 years or the next 100 years.
Yeah.
But it will win out.
Yeah, I don't really want to wait 100 years.
Yeah, I don't think you have. I might have 100 years.
Yeah. Well, you for sure. Yeah. So if people want to subscribe to Babylon Bee, if they want to help you guys out, how would they help?
Yeah, so babylonbee.com, I'll just say this in general, just support the content creators that you like, whether it's Babylon Bee or something else. Like that is how you're gonna change the world, not by mindlessly flipping on Facebook and hoping that Mark Zuckerberg shows you through his algorithm the content that you want. Go to Blaze, go to whatever the site that you like is. If it's babylonbee.com, awesome. And if you go to babylonbee.com, you can sign up for our newsletter, and that's our most direct way to reach people. Also, babylonbee.com/plans. That's where we let people sign up and subscribe and support us. We actually built a fully functioning social network on the back end of our website. So a lot of our community, we have a big community that's interacting in like a non-woke social network. So that's some people have completely pulled the plug from Facebook and joined our little social platform. So that's been awesome. That's
cool. And where can we see I'm sort of jealous about the John Cleese thing because he did not return my call.
Tragic.
Where will people get to see this conversation?
That'll be on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thebabylonbee.
Still on YouTube, huh?
We didn't
clinging.
YouTube has been one of the few that has like almost never dinged us for anything. They'll demonetize. We do any joke about guns, it gets demonetized, but it doesn't get suppressed. We don't get strikes.
I guess it's different style of content, I suppose.
Because it's satirical, I don't think the algorithm knows what to do with it. Because we'll do a video. Here's how dangerous guns are.
Yeah.
So it probably promotes it, but we're being sarcastic. So we have a little shield.
Okay, there's a hack for us.
There's a hack.
Okay.
Just be sarcastic.
Well, hopefully I don't get a strike just for talking to you. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the conversation, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and also ring the bell for notifications. And if you want to know more about Free the People, go to freethepeople.org.